12th century prophecy by St. Malachi, there would be 112 popes before the end of the church. And guess what number Pope Francis was? That's right, number 112.
These are the viral images of the Pope's last days. Who is that? What is this weird black figure? Just appearing in the background. It's creepy as hell. Everything seems normal there, and it appears again. Who is he talking to? What the heck?
Following Pope Francis's death, a chilling Nostradamus prediction has come back into focus that some believe foretold this very moment. In 1555, the French astrologer predicted the death of a very old pontiff and a weakening of the Catholic Church. In Les Prophéties, Nostradamus wrote, "Through the death of a very old pontiff, a Roman of good age will be elected. Of him it will be said that he weakens his seat, but long will he sit and in mordant activity." He also referenced a mysterious successor. A young man of dark skin with the help of the great king will deliver the purse to another of red color.
World prepares for the first black pope in history. From Conclave. This is the guy that played the black pope in the movie Conclave.
12th century prophecy, hidden for centuries, claims every pope was foretold, down to the very last one. And right now, we're at the end of the list. In 1595, a manuscript called The Prophecy of the Pope surfaced, allegedly written by St. Malachi. Each pope was described with a cryptic Latin phrase. The prophecy ends with Petrus Romanus, Peter of Rome. That's Pope Francis. And after him, the prophecy doesn't list another pope. It speaks of fire, destruction, the fall of Rome.
Pope dead at 88. This is going to be significance on Easter Monday, which is 421, which is like very significant date, the date of Ishtar, which is like the whole thing of rebirth. But if you just think 8 in itself, what it means, 8 is like money, power, and from my last video that I did, that 8 is Saturn, which is like, remember I showed the Saturn sigil and how it makes a Masonic compass, or the 8 points. So it's kind of all there, and it's interesting that, yeah, the Pope dies at 88, and then I got sent like this biblical quote too, and this kept coming up, which was Peter 4:17, and obviously 17 itself is an 8, and 17 I've spoke about before is not just an 8, but it's a specific 8. It's a number of the flips, so like the 17 within the loop, because the 8 is also the Ouroboros, which is Saturn, and the 17 loop is the 17 stages of the hero's journey that Joseph Campbell chose. So the John 17, it says, "For the time of judgment to begin in the house of the Lord." That's Peter 4:17, right? For it's time for the judgment to begin in the house of the Lord. So the house of the Lord, you could call that the church, the Vatican. And then judgment in itself is 18, because it's karma, because 8 is karma as well too. And that 8 itself is like, it's weird, because I spent a lot of time last year talking about the 8, and the 8 being the reflection. It can be both the mirrored reflection of realities, in which, like, the Gnostics talk about this, like it's got this ripple up and down like a mirror. So 8 can literally be smashing the mirror. Oh, sorry, that's actually the separation of the 8. The 8 itself is like you looking into the hypocrisy of the simulated self. It can be, and then like the 8 together, coming together, is actually the merging of the two hemispheres. An example of the breaking of the 8, and this is what they do when they do these rituals, like smashing the mirror ritual, because it's the connection between the two. And so that those two realities will always remain hidden from each other. But a good example of this one, because I was talking obviously about Saturn last week in my previous video, and Wallace Thornhill and Emmanuel Velikovsky and others that spoke about the war in the heavens, and the thunderbolts of the gods, and it talks about like the asteroid belt that's there. And if you look at the way that the solar system's in design, you've got the 4 inner planets, Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars. Then you've got the asteroid belt, then you've got Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, the 4 outer planets. And even when I spoke to Uncle Jilma in Central Australia, he spoke about the sun, the earth and the moon popping out. And it's also the same within Gnostic texts and the same within the Zulu as well, that they speak about that the outer planets weren't always there, and the outer planets are, you could say, part of the sim or not part of the organic reality, and the four inner planets in the Gnostic texts are what was always there, and then also the moon being brought in. And a lot of these rituals about, you're looking about like the merging of the two. And then Peter itself, that I found out, is Peter is the name given as the foundation or the stone. So Peter literally means the stone. So this is a Bible quote from Peter 4:17, which is a 4:8, and it talks about the judgment. And then the connection with the 8 too, because it's like it's all happening in the Vatican and Rome, and Rome is the city of Saturn, where they would hold the Saturnalia festival. Like Rome is literally the city of Saturn, but then you've got the 7 hills part of it too, and the importance of 7. So Rome is the city of the 7 hills, and this goes into the prophecy of Saint Malachi, that he talks about the end of Rome. And does he talk about the end of the Vatican, or the end of actually the city of Rome, or what that represents? But the 7's tied into the creation stories everywhere. It's like you got the 7 sisters, which is tied into all the tribal cultures around Australia. They all talk about the 7 sisters as far as creation and being the beings where they came from. But then it's also, I was showing all the different 8 references in the shrine the other week. And then if you look at like the Black Pope coming in, the Black Pope that is meant to be, if this is Peter the Roman, which doesn't make sense with the 112 of the Saint Malachi prophecies. But then again, the Vatican's actually held this document the whole time for like 800 years. So who's to say this hasn't been doctored and Peter the Roman still isn't to come to be there for like this tribulation period. But it's the Black Pope, and then you've got the black stone in the shrine, and stone literally means Peter, right? So is the Peter the Roman somewhere else? And this is what I believe, that there is going to be a transfer of power from the Northern Hemisphere, in particular Rome, in particular the trilogy of the Trinity of Rome, DC, and the British Crown and the City of London. But it appears that the City of London, at least symbolically, the City of London and Rome have already fallen, or about to fall, haven't quite officially fallen publicly, but the last one left is DC. So I just want to have a look at some of these. So here's the one where Trump sends in, oh no, I'm not going to do that. I'll get up the references to Peter. So this is where you get like, even like in Jordan, where you got the city of Petra. So Petra means stone, right? So it's the city of stone. So we get Peter from. And this is all, the reason I'm bringing this up is because Petra Romanus was the final Black Pope put into the prophecy of Saint Malachi, prophecy of the popes, and then also within Nostradamus speaking about the Black Pope too. But it says here, Peter literally means stone or rock. Petros, Patronus. The translation equals stone. The nickname that Jesus gave to the apostle Simon, known as Saint Peter, and consequently a popular name among Christians. Portugal is Pedro, or French is Pierre, slang is penis, blah, 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 all these different things. So Peter literally means stone. Again, going back to the shrine building, what is a shrine? It's stone, right? So yeah, here's the actual prophecy from Saint Malachi, who was this Irish saint who lived in the 11th century and wrote the prophecy about the 112 popes that would remain. Said the last one list bears the name in Latin Petrus Romanus, Peter the Roman, and is precisely after the pontificate according to the prophecy lines. In the final, this is a quote, in the final persecution of the Holy Roman Empire, there will reign Peter the Roman, who will feed his flock amid many tribulations, after which the city of the seven hills, which is Rome, will be destroyed, and a dreadful judge will judge the people. So how fucking wild is that? It just doesn't appear that Francis was that pope. And there's a lot of weird things as far as the way that, like, Francis came in. Was he a bit of an imposter? He was the first Jesuit pope. He was the first non-European pope. He replaced Pope Benedict, Joseph Ratzinger. And obviously, like, there was a lot of controversy around Benedict being a German, ties to the Nazi party, ties to child trafficking, and moving a lot of these pedophile priests and stuff around. And then the first pope to actually stand down who wasn't dead. And this was because a lot of the outward pressure and stuff, that there was even talk that if he entered into Italy outside the Vatican City, that he would be arrested, and he was being held by the Swiss Guard in protection of the jurisdiction of the Vatican City. So how do we know that Francis was even a legitimate pope? We don't. Obviously he played that role, but there's a lot of weird things around there. So who said Petra Romanus isn't yet to come? And obviously, like, the prophecy's a bit dead if there's another pope. But if you look in the Vatican Church, that you'll see that they've got all the popes' pictures all around, and then there's one bit remaining. So there is a place for Francis who's been put up there, but there's one spot left remaining for the final pope. So I'm pretty sure the Vatican's aware, and I would say believes in this prophecy, that this is the final prophecy. But a really interesting one here, just to go back to the 8, because Trump's put up the golden rule of negotiating. So he tweeted this the exact same day that he sends JD Vance to go visit the Pope. He said the golden rule of negotiating success is he who has the gold makes the rules. Thank you. This is like a weird kind of cryptic thing, which Trump does, but obviously JD Vance is wearing the gold tie. But then have a look, people are pointing out that he's doing the Masonic handshake, but, like, to be honest, who really gives a fuck? I don't care. But the important thing I noticed here, which I found interesting, is he's got Kronos there. So you've got the Pope dying at 88, you've got Kronos, which is Saturn, that represents 8, which represents karma, which represents power and money, and all these kind of things, commerce, the rule of law, religion itself is ruled by Saturn, all these things. So to me, it tells me that there is a energy that's coming to an end. The actual karmic loop of Saturn is going to fall upon itself. And then you've got all the ties in with the 7. Another interesting one that I found too was Prince actually died on the same day. When did Prince die? 2016. And Prince was a really interesting one because he was, like, represented as color purple. There was a huge symbology that up until that period, the year Prince died, because that was the year of the Queen's Jubilee. So they were putting purple everywhere. And then Prince actually ends up dying. Obviously his name's Prince. Dies in the elevator as he's ascending to, what's the purple? Purple is the crown chakra, where you become the king or the prince, right? And he dies in the elevator and wasn't able to reach that. So anyway, there has been some, I'll put this, my other video on bit. I just wanted to point this out at the start just so I didn't miss anything, but there has been, like, there was some legitimacy to some of the prophecy of the popes from St. Malachi, particularly the one around John Paul II, because what did he say about John Paul? He basically, there was a solar reference and he was born on the solar eclipse.
Allegedly written by St. Malachy. Each pope was described with a cryptic Latin phrase. One was called De Laboris Solis, the labor of the sun. Pope John Paul II was born and buried during solar eclipses.
We will see, but I think Sportsbet's got their odds out for this, what's his name, the Ghana Cardinal, Peter Turkson, a 76-year-old from Ghana. So is Peter Turkson going to be Petrus Romanus? And what does the Romanus bit mean? But interesting what it will be, right? As far as the following death of the pontiff, the new leader would emerge. One would be Roman by descent, while Pope Francis, born in Argentina, his Italian heritage has led some to consider the prophecy may refer to him in a symbolic sense. According to Nostradamus, his successor will weaken the seat, which has prompted some to reflect that the Pope Francis leadership style, often characterized as progressive, and at its times controversial, because like he was like fully down for gay marriage and climate change and all these other agendas. But the actual prophecy, and I really don't think it ties into Francis. I think it's going to be the next one that is Peter Romanus. It says, in the final persecution of the Holy Roman Church, there will reign Peter the Roman, who will feed his flock amid many tribulations, after which the city of the 7 hills will be destroyed, and the dreadful judge will judge the people. I don't know, make of that what you will.
Appeared at his window to bless the crowd. However, bizarrely, as he stepped back inside, he seemed to vanish in thin air.
He just disappears.
He goes bye-bye.
Also juggling taking care of their children.
Dude, is it not? He's gone.
Oh my.
Even curiouser, the Vatican removed all copies of this video, leaving only the official version. As to why the Vatican would do this, some believe Francis was sick that day, or alternatively, that this is a common safety protocol, perhaps to prevent assassination attempts.
So just short interruption. I just want to alert everyone that I'm about to upload in the next couple of days the Bendigo event video, which will be on my website, beyonddarktolight.com, but have a look at the link below if you want to check that out. Corey's put a lot of work into editing this. It's about 4.5 hour presentation that's got the whole day in there. So if people miss the event and they wanted to catch up on that, that'll be on my website. And then also the Blue Yuki oils. I've done videos with Richard and stuff before and shown like how awesome his products are, and he donated to our event too. So just want to highlight Richard, particularly this goat's milk eucalyptus soap, which I've been using shaving, and it's freaking magnificent. And yeah, I can't speak highly enough about that insect repellent. And then of course Remedy Collective, don't really need to say too much about them. I've even been crook a bit lately, so I've been using some of this at the moment. It should be a standard tool for anyone in their home really. So if you want to get the Blue Yuki, it's 10% off if you use discount code with a capital D, lowercase ALE, so just Dale, for a discount code. If you want any of the products in Remedy Collective store, if you want to get a discount there, it's 15% off with all capitals DALE, but I'll leave the links below. But yeah, if you haven't signed up to my mailing list as well on my website, go there. It'll be on the front page if you want to sign up, and that will alert you when we post that video online. Super interesting, the Pope dying at this time, and the stuff that Nikki's found in relation to the gods and goddesses, and even the past video I put out on the Black Sun. It's like very timely putting that video out in the Black Sun, and then this prophecy of the Black Pope and stuff like that too. And then the date that Pope Francis dies is on April 21st, which is the date of Ishtar, and it's also the founding date of Rome. So I'll just start this with the prophecy of the popes. Now I'm trying to think when I first got into this. I think it was around the time when Pope John Paul was about to die, and I can't remember when that was. I think it was maybe the late 2000s, like 07 or 08 or something. And then Pope Benedict took over Joseph Ratzinger, and he had a very questionable history. And around that time I was listening to a guy, Kevin Arnett, and people would know the story of the missing children in these Canadian boarding homes, and that relation to the Queen visit and all that kind of stuff, those kind of stories. And he ended up running this kind of pseudo court for international justice, or whatever. I can't remember what it was called. but he was running these court cases, and he's a former Protestant priest, I believe, and he ended up becoming like a whistleblower. But he ended up, regardless of what you think of the validity of the court, he ended up putting out a lot of stuff about Ratzinger and child trafficking, and then even stuff into Pope Francis. But that was around the time, I'm trying to think, when I got into the prophecy of the popes, and I heard about this prophecy of the 112 popes. And interesting that April 21st, and April 21st is a very significant date on the solar year, and a very significant date on the satanic calendar. And if you watch Mark Pasco's presentations about the season of sacrifice from March equinox until Beltane on May the 1st, or May Day, he goes through all the dates. They've had like huge worldwide events that happen in this period, and a lot of death rituals, and it's kind of like tied to the harvest and stuff, and obviously Ishtar and rebirth. And this is where I think it's like going into the shrine. And so anyway, so April 21st is the 111th day of the year. Now, according to the prophecy of the popes, the final pope is, because they were all written in basically like these mottos that were written in Latin, and it was by this guy Saint Malachi from Ireland, and I think he was born in like late 10s or whatever, but lived in the 1100s, and he eventually did this. He took this trip to the Vatican and apparently had these visions, and this like opens up a whole other thing about prophecy and what prophecy is. But he had this, what would you call it? This moment of God or whatever, where he's received this information, and he documented the final 112 popes before the end of the Roman Catholic Church. Some said the end of the world, but so anyway, according to that, and they say that the prophecies were extremely accurate up until about 1600, and that was when it was first released, that this document actually existed in the Vatican Library, and up until that, no one knew it existed. So it basically remained hidden for 400 to 500 years, and has now been out in the open since the 1600s. So that's about another 400 years. But they say, without going into it, and people can do that, they can go look at all the different prophecy of the popes and the mottos, but they say that a lot of them were with extreme accuracy, and they were either a depiction of where the pope was from, something about his reign, and or what the purpose of his reign would be, or something connected to the time of that. And like anything like that, it's hard to decipher the symbolism and stuff, especially when it was written 800 years ago. But anyways, the final pope, the 112th pope, is Petra Romanus, which is Peter of Rome, or Peter the Roman. And so I remember like telling everyone, like when Benedict came in, I'm like, fuck, this is the second last pope, like we don't have long left now. and kind of getting all excited. And then we know what happened with Benedict, and actually Kevin Arnett believes like the information that they were putting out around the Pope had played a significant role into why that Pope had to stand down, and like being the first Pope to stand down, basically because of all the heat of all this child trafficking and stuff that was coming to light. And it was said that the Pope Benedict there was an arrest warrant in Italy for his arrest. But that's the thing, that the Vatican is a state within itself, and they don't have extradition treaties. And while you remain within Vatican City, that you are under their jurisdiction, and you have the Swiss Guard and that protecting you. But anyway, so like they say there was extreme accuracy with the prophecies up until about 1600, and then after that it's a bit more like the phrases and the mottos are much shorter and harder to decipher. But like I remember like the Benedict one when he came in, because that was like the talk at the time about the prophecy, and he was called something of the olive, Glory of the Olive, I think he was called, yeah. And like people made that correlation there, because he like chose his name because of the Benedictine chapter of the church and stuff like that, and that's the symbol of the olive. But the thing was Pope John Paul that he got with accuracy, because he said like Solaris, or something like whatever it is in Latin, connected to the sun. And Pope John Paul was born on the summer on a solar eclipse. So anyway, it's like it's very interesting. But the 421 is quite a symbolic date too. And the 4, like, even this is what they say. They say 4,000 years. If you go on scripture, it's 4,000 years from Adam and Eve until the birth of Christ, and then from the birth and death of Christ up until the so-called second coming is then 2,000 years. So you got the 4, the 2, and then you have the 1,000 year reign. So there's all like Christian people will be going nuts over this, but what I wanted to say about Peter, and because this goes into the Nostradamus prophecy into about the Black Pope, but Peter the Roman. Now Peter actually means disciple. So Peter was the start of the church, and the reason he was called that, and Jesus gave Simon the Apostle the name Peter, or the nickname Peter, because Peter means rock, and that's like the beginning of the church too, is the rock or the foundation stone, and then the final pope is also Peter. But if you look at, they put up a news article the other day, or they've been putting them up everywhere, and they're saying you can actually put bets on the Pope. And I was going to go this, what's his name? The guy from Ghana. There's a black cardinal from Ghana, Peter Turkin, I think. People would know him if they see his face, but yeah. So he's from Ghana, and so the last Pope was actually the first Pope that was not European. He came from Argentina. So this would be an even more interesting one. But so. I just find it interesting that with like everything that we've said about the shrine, and that, like, the whole feminine and masculine kind of ritual that takes place with like the light of Apollo, and then what I was calling in the last video is like this black stone, which can be so fair, and this heaven to earth fall. But then would it not also tie into, because I didn't even know Peter meant stone, and it's like the black stone within the shrine that shines the light onto it. And yeah, well, there's so much stuff too. And then you've got the 88. So very interesting. So he dies at 88. And then they announced Klaus Schwab, who Jason predicted in his video a couple of years ago, that the WF would be coming to an end and Klaus Schwab would be stepping down. But the 88, and then Klaus Schwab announces, he's actually 87 years old, but he comes out and says he was in his, he's standing down in his 88th year. Who the fuck says like in the year that they're turning? You don't do that. So they're really highlighting this point of the 88. And then you had Trump put up this tweet or this Truth Social post, and he said something like, I'll put it up here, but like something about who controls, he said, the art of the deal, negotiation or something, who controls the gold has the power, something like that. Anyway, but then he sends JD Vance to the Pope. The day before the Pope dies, he meets the Pope. He's wearing a gold tie. Trump tweets out this thing about gold, and he's been saying this since he's come back in, that like this is the golden era, this is the golden era. Where's all the gold stored, right? Whereas the Vatican has like hoarded the wealth of the world to basically be the biggest land and property owners in the world, and they've hoarded all this wealth under the guise that the Pope is the intermediary between God. And this is why I see that this is like, the prophecy makes sense, because I do see an end of religion taking place, and people are going to have more of the connection to Creator does not need to come through an intermediary. And this is what I was even saying in this video the other day too, that like even Jesus itself is a form of like a spiritual bridge to access creation, if you look at it on that level. But yeah, so they put all these gold references in, and then if you look in the back of the picture with JD Vance and the Pope, you see a fucking picture of Kronos. So I don't know if this is normally in this section of the Vatican, and like David Icke said for many years, the Vatican is the Church of Babylon relocated. Everything, like you got all the Mithraism in there, you've got Dagon and stuff in the fish hat or the mitre that they wear. You've got all the pagan and like tree symbolism all around the Vatican. You've obviously got the womb and and the obelisk and all this kind of stuff, and all the Saturn symbolism around Rome. But it's in this picture here that they've got Kronos right in the back, just as he's about to die. And Kronos is like the angel of death. It does symbolize death. Kronos is Saturn. It also symbolizes time. And Kronos is 8. Saturn is 8. The Pope then dies at 88. So they've chucked in all this kind of symbolism here too. And the thing is, like, if you look at like alchemy and stuff and turning things into gold too, that's also represented in the same. So I think it's quite an amazing time, and I think people can feel that, yeah, we're absolutely on the cusp of world-changing events. Sorry, I fucking had this freaking... I've been sick actually since I went to the Blues Fest on the weekend, and I was going to go for a couple of days. I started feeling sick the day I went, and then I used to do this years ago actually. I like mentally trained myself that if you started getting sick, I was like, I can actually drink my way through it, and it actually does work. Like if I'm feeling really crap, and then I start drinking, especially like drinking quick, it kind of kills off, especially if you got like sore throat and chest and headache and all that kind of stuff, which I did, and you drink yourself through it. And then we had to walk like 2 hours home at 1 o'clock in the morning to Brunswick Heads on the fucking highway. And I'm like, yeah, I feel fucking sweet. Even the next day I was like a bit hungover, still felt good, and then bang, it always hits you like 2 days later. Now I've been crook all this week. So yeah, what was I saying? Yeah, but the other part was I put up this picture because I did that last video on the Black Sun and Saturn, and I was showing all like the different depictions within Saturn within the shrine and how you can see that, but especially the bird's eye view of the shrine and the part that like leads out into that William Barrack building. It's very much symbolic of a womb, but it's also Saturn. And if you look at like some of the ancient depictions of Saturn, they show this one with the shrine. It's like a 4-pointed star and then an 8-point, and Saturn being 8, but it has this bridge that comes off, and it's also done in Masonic symbolism as like the circle, and I put it up in the last video, and then the triangle on top, and it's an ancient symbol of Saturn. And so if you look at St. Peter's Square, it's very, very fucking similar to the shrine, right? And if you look at also, like, especially a lot of the symbolism, the stuff that happened around the Queen and the taking down of the Royal Seal that happened in like 2020, all the weird symbolism of like Trump walking in front of the Queen, Harry. I did like this whole decode on Prince Harry's book like a couple of years ago, and there's so much in that book. It's like such a good read. And then everything that's happened with Prince Andrew, and then the symbolism that came out with King Charles and the Red Horseman video portrait that was portrayed of him. All these kind of little weird things that have shown that the divine right of rule, divine right of kings, that is still heavily symbolic within the British royal family. Even though a lot of it went underground, they are still like the front figure of that dominion of earth, and for them having the divine right to rule, which is like what is the same as like the Zionists and stuff too. It's the same ideology, that they are the special people, that they have the divine right to rule. That's been handed down through the divine right of kings. Anyway, so that very much is coming to an end. And then if you've seen now the symbolism around the Pope, and they did all this weird stuff where, remember the Pope came out and waved like during the pandemic, and then he like glitched, and they were showing it was like some fucking AI video or whatever they put out. So there's a lot of weird stuff like that. But then this, and it actually kind of all predates back to when Trump did this visit to the Pope with the Vatican. And there's some people that have suggested that they use this flag language. I think they call it semaphore or something, this Q guy used to talk about, and that Melania is always used as a flagpole. And so the symbolism where Trump went was always within Melania and what she was wearing. And if you look at Melania in the picture when they went and met the Pope, it's absolutely representing a funeral. And I think it wasn't just her, it was like her, Ivanka, Donald, There might have been someone else too, and I think they were all wearing black. And people were commenting at the time like the Pope looks like he's fucking just been like they've just given him some bad news or something. So it all kind of goes back to that. But then you look at the final exposure. Excuse me. When you're looking at like the 3 different states, and of course Rome. Sorry, so that's the 3 different states, and the last one being the military arm, being Washington DC. It would look like that would be the next one that at least on the surface level is going to symbolically fall before we actually see something. And I do believe that's going to happen. And that, so this is all, how do you expose the military and the Pentagon and Washington DC? Well, I think that's highlighting that's where it's all going to take place. And then there was one where like Jared Rennick brought up in the Senate estimates, he was talking to the ASIO head of ASIO, Burgess, and that fucking disgusting little prick Christopher Watt jumped in, and he was talking about this Australian politician, because apparently the ASIO had intelligence on him, and how this got leaked, that they were selling out Australia to a foreign country, which is, like this is treason or high treason in many other countries. It's like worthy of the death penalty. But is this Alexander Downer? Because it looks like, I think the exposure, at least what Trump and his faction want to have exposed, is all going to start with Russiagate. If you especially look at his appointment with like having Dan Bongino and Kash Patel in there at the FBI, that was their main story. Especially Bongino being an alternative media guy, his main story for years. And I think he's written it in his book, and Kash Patel's obviously was the main investigator into Russiagate, so he knows all about that. I think that exposure is going to come from that. And who's the key player from Australia that's involved in that was Alexander Downer. And Downer's obviously connected to the Clinton Foundation, MI6, basically the old Five Eyes network. But yeah, he was part of that group that was there to set up George Papadopoulos. So anyway, I feel this is what they're doing, because they're going after the military. And when you go after the military, you're talking about military intelligence, you're talking about technologies and stuff like this, and you're also talking about Black Ops projects when you're talking about UAPs and all the rest of it, which is coming into light now. And this is why I see like the end of the Catholic Church is coming to an end. It's because there's going to be a homogenization of all these religions that are actually going to form into a new religion. And we're at the end of the age of Pisces too. And Pisces is ruled, Pisces is all about belief, right? So we've had this 2,000 years where people are being rigid and stuck in their belief, and then we're entering into an age of Aquarius, which is, or entering the end of the grand cycle, and it's more about knowing. So I can understand why you wouldn't even from the power center, if they wanted to control too, you don't want to have an intermediary, the supposed representative of God, because it's not going to fit in with the energy of the time, leaving Pisces and going into Aquarius, so people are having a more intimate knowing. So I think like there's going to be lots of different shock and awe that is going to take place, both good and bad, that is going to expose this last military arm of the trilogy. But then what we'll actually get into tomorrow with Nikki is that the Empire, and I believe this is like with the whole energy of the flip and stuff, that it's actually the safe location has always been Australia, and that buildings like the Shrine and stuff like this have actually, and Canberra itself, and like fuck man, if you hear some of the stuff that Nikki's got on Canberra, especially some of these chats she's been having with ChatGPT, which is weird in itself, and a whole other discussion which maybe we'll have tomorrow. But Australia, to me, I really think is set up as a new Babylon. And again, I think the Shrine's a key part of that. And I would still watch for things, because if you're talking about the ending of these religions, it's going to be... Oh shit, it's still going. The end of these religions is going to be brought about, I believe, through conflict, and you're starting to see all this stuff now with the like the media and stuff's putting out these these advertisements about stopping anti-Semitism, and there's a real divide even within the alternative media that people have like now picked a side on the whole Israel-Palestine thing. And to me, it looks like Israel is like in its last days, and an exposure of what the Israeli state is and what it's been used for, not the landmass, but what it's been used for is going to reach, excuse me, is going to reach its peak. And if you have this whole, I think it's going to be centered around Jerusalem, but man, I've spoken about this that many times, but yeah. Also, Dome of the Rock being center, and basically the destruction of the Abrahamic religions, and then to bring about this new religion. And is this what anyway, I'll go into it tomorrow with a shrine. It's fucking, I won't be able to put it into words in the way that Nikki can, but it's like, trust me, it's gonna be a good one tomorrow. So anyway, if we're in the end times or the end of the cycle, fucking good, because it's whatever's going to bring about truth, then so be it. And again, like anyone that's like having a dick saying, "Oh, you're worried about all external things," no, it's a mirror. One's a reflection of the other, and they're both important too. And I've been pretty quiet lately too, because I've been dipping in and out of stuff that I'm looking into, but then also just like having a good time as well, and not really worrying too much about these things. But that's like, why are we even into this stuff? It's like, honestly, at the end of the day, it comes down, it's like, it's this curiosity. It's like, it's not even like I need to know. It's just curiosity and actually fascination about the world. And that's what these prophecies, I think, open up to a much bigger conversation about, like, what is prophecy? And if it's connected to certainty of certain blueprints and timelines, so that opens up a different story about like what this is and what these prophets are actually tapping into. And do you believe in the absolute certainty of a prophecy? And for most Christians, of course they do, because they believe in the prophecy of their own book. But I don't believe anything's absolute. So anyway, I'll leave it at that. Catch you later.
And you've done so well. I mean, what a venue. Good grief. And just looking at the itinerary, I'm so excited, pumped, because this is a beautiful itinerary. I'm going to be excited just to be watching what's going on. Obviously, I've got to get up on stage at certain points and say some stuff, but this is going to be so exciting. I can't wait.
Oh, I'm so with you, Rach, and just also all the people coming together that aren't always on the screen and that we get to meet in real life and hug and high five. I think that's going to be amazing. Just that community of all the people that, you know, listen to what you guys always have to share and all that sort of stuff. So it's going to be amazing.
I've been pretty much a hermit for a very long time, you know, because of, you know, various reasons. But I lost all my fear in Uluru. I was part of a ceremony where we sort of called in the permanent harmony time of the ley lines, and those soul fragments that had been taken during childhood returned, and I just lost all fear.
But yeah, so we're going to start at 9. Saturday we'll finish at 5. Lunch is obviously included, which will be it's going to be incredible.
Talk about Narita's going to be jamming.
Yes.
Well, I might dust off the old vocals just to see what happens.
Very exciting. The raffle was so much fun last time. It was a really big hit, and lots of people came up to me afterwards and were like, those were some great prizes.
Share it more intimately with people, and people get like a good experience out of the weekend. They walk away feeling rejuvenated and feeling good about the information. I think like a lot of the information is going to be like self-responsibility and what you can do, and that like I know with you, Rachel, too, every time I spoke to you, I always feel more positive. You've always got this positive spin on it, and you too, Narita, like you always always have a positive attitude about what's happening, because like, you know, there's so much of a focus on certain negative things, and I think that it's going to be more of a joyous event in as far as the information that's being received. You can just feel that with the energy where it's going. And and being able to share that with people, I think it's going to be really cool.
McLaren Vale is a very beautiful area, isn't it?
Yes.
That's where the venue is for the Saturday, and then the Sunday. Well, Rachel, you can speak to the Sunday. The
Sunday's in the Onkaparinga area of Penny's Hill Road, and just the drive to this particular spot is beautiful. It's very off the beaten track, really, really lovely. but not so off the beaten track that you need a four-wheel drive. So it's, you know, it's accessible, but just stunning. Lots of ley lines on the way up there too.
It's the feeling of freedom in the unknown. So everything is a polarity within the universe. Everything has a counter expression. So if something exists, the opposite must exist.
More the numbers you were born with are your natural tools and talents, Kate. These are the radio stations that you are naturally plugged into.
I've been living on borrowed time for a very long time as well, luckily. So I have made sure that the time that I've had here, it's like a gift. My actual timeline, I really felt like if I could make it to 50, and I've done it now, I would be happy.
To what's going on in the world and to you seeing yourself in a totally new light, and you can never come back from that. It's like when a rubber band is stretched, it can no longer be put back to exactly where it was.
That's something that people will be able to take in or be able to use the lyrics at least and sing their own version of into the lays. And with the intent of clearing and cleansing and putting positive loving energy into the lay. Because we've had these Satanists hide the existence of the ley lines, co-opt the major portal spaces and do horrific things in those spaces for millennia. And what we need to do, and all we need is a critical number of people to do it, go in there and turn it around.
When I realised that I'd actually chosen to come here, it was a realisation, not necessarily a memory. Then the pain went away.
Well, how exciting is this? We are definitely doing another event. Where's it going to be and who's it going to be with and all this stuff. And we can finally announce.
Going to go to Adelaide and we're going to have Rachel Vaughan presenting at the next one.